George Russell has one race to stop Mercedes from becoming Kimi Antonelli's team. Not 1 month. Not half a season. One race. Barcelona. Because Russell is not just 68 points behind his teammate. He is chasing a 19-year-old who has won 5 races in a row, leads the championship, and could match Russell's entire career win total with one more victory in Spain. That is not pressure. That is a warning shot. Russell was supposed to inherit Mercedes after Lewis Hamilton left for Ferrari. But now Hamilton is ahead of him in the standings, Antonelli is running away at the top, and the fastest car on the grid is starting to look more natural in the rookie's hands than in the senior drivers. And Barcelona makes this even more dangerous. This is the track where Antonelli first showed he could go faster than Russell in testing. This is the track where Mercedes should have no excuses. And this is the track where one defeat could turn Russell's title dream from difficult into almost impossible. Because if Russell finally beats Antonelli here, the rivalry comes back to life. But if Antonelli wins again, Mercedes may not need to announce a new leader. The stopwatch will do it for them. Subscribe to the channel. Barcelona is not just another race for George Russell. It is the place where his entire season may stop being a comeback story, and start becoming an uncomfortable truth. Because until now, Russell has still had reasons. Real reasons. Japan had a safety car that hurt his strategy. Canada had a sudden power cut while he was fighting Kimi Antonelli for the lead. Monaco had penalties, confusion, and a communication failure that Mercedes itself accepted had contributed to the mess. So yes, Russell can say his season has been damaged by moments that were not entirely in his control. But Barcelona changes that. Because Barcelona is one of those tracks where excuses become very hard to protect. It is not Monaco, where traffic can destroy a weekend before the race even begins. It is not Canada, where one safety car or one mechanical shock can turn the whole result upside down. Barcelona is different. Barcelona is a measuring stick. Long corners. Fast direction changes. Heavy aerodynamic load. A second sector that punishes any car that does not feel balanced underneath the driver. In simple terms, this circuit tells teams the truth. If the car is strong, it shows. If the setup is wrong, it shows. If a driver is uncomfortable, it shows. And if one teammate is simply extracting more from the same machine, that shows too. That is why this weekend is so dangerous for Russell. Mercedes should be strong here. The W17 was designed for the new era of Formula One, with more electrical power, active aerodynamics, and a much more complex relationship between speed and energy than the cars from previous years. This is not a car that only rewards bravery. It rewards adaptation. It rewards feeling. It rewards a driver who can understand when the car wants downforce, when it wants low drag, when it needs energy saved, and when it can be attacked. Think of it like driving a car that changes personality during the lap. In one corner, it wants patience. On the straight, it wants precision. In the next braking zone, it wants control. The driver has to feel all of that before the stopwatch punishes him. And that is where Antonelli has been frightening. He has not looked like a teenager trying to understand the machine. He has looked like the machine was built in his language. That is the part Russell has to answer. Not the hype. Not the headlines. Not the noise. The feeling. Because at the start of 2026, Russell was the obvious Mercedes leader. Lewis Hamilton had left for Ferrari, and with that move, a huge space opened inside the team. Mercedes needed someone to become the reference. Someone the engineers could trust. Someone who could guide development. Someone who could stand in front of the cameras and look like the future had not disappeared with Hamilton. Russell seemed built for that role. He was experienced enough, polished enough, fast enough, and already deeply connected to the team. He had waited for this moment. Then Australia arrived, and he delivered. A win in the first race of the season. The perfect statement. It made the entire Mercedes plan look stable. Russell was leading. Antonelli was learning. The team had moved on. For a moment, everything made sense. But Formula One has a brutal way of turning one clean story into a completely different one. Because while Russell looked like the leader in Australia, Antonelli did not look like a passenger. He looked close. Then he looked dangerous. Then he started winning. And once that happened, the meaning of Russell's season changed. At first, losing ground to Antonelli could be explained as a rough stretch. A few unlucky events. A few difficult weekends. A few moments where the race simply broke the wrong way. But when Antonelli wins 5 races in a row, explanations begin to lose their protection. Because the other car is not struggling. The other car is not waiting. The other car is building a championship lead. And that is the nightmare for any senior driver. When the team is slow, everyone looks for technical answers. When the team is fast, everyone looks at the drivers. That is exactly what is happening to Russell now. The car is good enough. The opportunity is real. The title is there for Mercedes. But it is Antonelli who is taking it. And this is where the psychological pressure becomes heavier than the points gap. 68 points is a huge number, especially after only 6 rounds. But the more painful number may be 5. 5 consecutive victories for Antonelli. 5 weekends where the story grew stronger. 5 reminders that the teenager was not just surviving in the Hamilton seat, but turning it into his own. And now comes the number that makes Barcelona feel almost personal. 6. Antonelli can win his 6th Grand Prix in Spain. Russell has 6 career Grand Prix victories. One more Antonelli win would mean the 19-year-old has matched Russell's entire career total in one early season surge. That is the kind of statistic that does not need shouting. It lands by itself. It tells the audience everything about how quickly the balance inside Mercedes has shifted. Russell's career has been built over years. Antonelli's rise has been measured in weeks. That does not make Russell weak. But it does make the comparison impossible to ignore. And Barcelona is the worst place for that comparison to arrive. Because this track already has history between them. Back in January, during the private Mercedes shakedown, the W17 completed more than 500 laps across 5 days. That alone was a warning to the rest of the grid. A new car, a new rulebook, a massive technical change, and Mercedes was already running with minimal reliability issues. But inside that test, something even more important happened. Russell and Antonelli were close. Very close. On one day, Antonelli went fastest with a lap of 1 minute, 17.362 seconds, just over 2/10 ahead of Russell. Then Russell answered the following day with the fastest lap of the week, 1 minute, 16.445 seconds. At the time, it looked like a perfect internal battle. Healthy competition. A young driver pushing the senior driver. The senior driver responding. But now, after everything that has happened, that test feels different. It feels like the first clue. Antonelli was already showing Mercedes that he was not waiting for permission. He was already close enough to create discomfort. And Barcelona was the place where the first warning appeared. Now they return to the same circuit with the championship balance completely transformed. Russell is no longer the clear leader. Antonelli is no longer the promising young driver. Hamilton is no longer the Mercedes passed quietly out of the picture, because he is sitting ahead of Russell in the standings with Ferrari. And Mercedes is no longer simply celebrating a dominant car. It is managing a rivalry that could shape the team's entire future. That is why Block 1 of this story is not about whether Russell is talented. He is. It is not about whether he has speed. He does. He won in Australia. He won the China sprint race. He fought Antonelli for 30 laps in Canada before the power failure ended his chance. This is not a driver who has forgotten how to win. The real question is more uncomfortable. Can Russell still win the internal argument? Because inside a Formula One team, beating your teammate is more than a result. It decides whose feedback becomes more valuable, whose confidence shapes the garage, whose side of the car becomes the emotional center of the operation. And once one driver starts to feel like the future, every race begins to confirm or challenge that belief. Antonelli has been confirming it. Russell now has to challenge it. And he has to do it at a track where the car should work, where the team has data, where the layout rewards balance, and where excuses will not survive long. That is why Barcelona feels like a line in the season. Before Barcelona, Russell could still point to missed chances. After Barcelona, if Antonelli beats him again, the paddock may stop asking when Russell's luck will turn. It may start asking whether the hierarchy already has. And that is the part Mercedes cannot control with strategy. They can manage tires. They can call pit stops. They can adjust wings, battery deployment, and aerodynamic modes. But they cannot hide what happens when two teammates get the same opportunity, on the same track, in the same dominant car, and one of them keeps making the other look late to the future. For Russell, that is the real pressure. Not just to finish ahead. Not just to score points. Not even just to win. He needs to make Barcelona feel like Australia again. He needs to remind Mercedes that the driver they expected to lead this era is still there. Because if he does not, the question will no longer be whether Russell can catch Antonelli in the championship. The question will be whether Mercedes still believes he is the driver to build around. Canada should have been the weekend where George Russell changed everything. Not slightly. Not quietly. Completely. Because before Canada, the story was already turning against him, but it had not fully hardened yet. Antonelli had momentum. Antonelli had wins. Antonelli had the points gap growing in his favor. But Russell still had something powerful to hold on to. He could say he had been unlucky. He could say the season had not shown the full picture. He could say the speed was still there, and that when the right chance came, he would prove it. Then Canada gave him that chance. For 30 laps, Russell and Antonelli fought at the front in the same car, with the same Mercedes badge, carrying two completely different futures on their shoulders. This was not a distant comparison on a timing screen. This was direct. Wheel to wheel. Lap after lap. A senior driver trying to stop the rise of the teenager. A young driver trying to prove the championship lead was not a gift. And for Russell, this mattered more than almost anything that had happened before. Because when your teammate is beating you in the standings, the cleanest way to change the story is not with an explanation. It is not with a quote. It is not with a promise that better weekends are coming. You have to beat him on track. You have to make the garage watch the evidence in real time. That was what Canada offered Russell. A chance to look across the same Mercedes garage and say, I am still here. And for a while, he was. He matched Antonelli blow for blow. He did not disappear. He did not collapse. He did not look like a driver already beaten by the moment. He looked like a title contender fighting for oxygen. That is what makes what happened next so painful. Because the comeback did not end with Antonelli passing him cleanly and driving away. It did not end with Russell making a visible mistake under pressure. It ended with a sudden power cut. A failure. A car problem at the worst possible time. The kind of moment that turns a race from a statement into a scar. Russell retired while fighting for the lead. Antonelli won. And the championship gap jumped to 43 points. That number hurt, but the way it happened hurt more. Because Canada left Russell trapped inside a question that can drive any driver mad. What if? What if the car had held together? What if he had stayed in the fight? What if he had beaten Antonelli when the pressure was at its highest? What if Canada had been remembered as the weekend Russell stopped the bleeding? Instead, it became the weekend that made Antonelli look even more unstoppable. And that is the cruelest part of bad luck in Formula One. It does not only take points from you. Sometimes it gives glory to the other side of the garage. Antonelli did not need to ask for the win. He still had to be there. He still had to survive. He still had to finish the job. But the result gave him exactly what a championship leader needs. Another victory. Another layer of belief. Another reason for the team to see him as the driver with the season moving toward him. Russell was left with pace, frustration, and no trophy. And those three things do not weigh the same. Pace is useful. Frustration is human. But victory is what changes a championship. After Canada, Russell said something that revealed just how deep the moment had cut. He admitted that, right now, it was Antonelli's championship, unless Antonelli lost it. That was not just honesty. That was a psychological shift. Because championship drivers do not usually hand the emotional ownership of a title fight to someone else, especially not to their own teammate. They resist. They protect the belief. They say there is a long way to go. They say anything can happen. They keep the door open with their language, even when the numbers look ugly. Russell did something different. He gave the situation a name. Antonelli's. Unless he loses it. That sentence changed the tone of the rivalry. Because once a driver says the championship belongs to the other side unless something changes, everyone hears it. The engineers hear it. The media hears it. The rival teams hear it. And most importantly, the teammate hears it. Antonelli could pretend not to. He could stay calm, stay polite, avoid the favorite label, and say the season was still long. But deep down, he would know what that sentence meant. It meant Russell felt the weight. And when a rival knows you feel the weight, every race becomes sharper. Then came Monaco. And Monaco did not give Russell the heartbreak of a missed victory. It gave him something worse. A weekend that looked chaotic, messy, and damaging from every angle. Antonelli arrived as the driver with momentum and turned that momentum into history. Pole position. Control. A victory in the most unforgiving race on the calendar. His 5th consecutive win. The youngest Monaco Grand Prix winner ever. That is the kind of result that does not just add points. It creates mythology. Monaco has a special place in Formula One because everyone understands how difficult it is, even casual fans. The walls are close. The track is narrow. Overtaking is almost impossible. One tiny mistake can destroy everything. So when a young driver wins there, especially under pressure, the sport tends to remember. And for Antonelli, it made his rise feel even more serious.